You know that feeling when you finally decide to upgrade your backup power and you grab the cheapest generator you can find, only to end up watching the lights flicker out the second the load spikes? I've been there, and the regret that follows can feel like a waste of both money and peace of mind. That's why I spent a few evenings watching a handful of YouTube deep dives, scrolling through the most recent Amazon questions, and even reading a few forum threads where people were swapping stories about generators that died on the first storm. If you're the type of buyer who hesitates because you've heard horror stories about cheap units blowing fuses or stalling on a half-loaded job site, stick around. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I'm going to walk through whether the FIRMAN T09275 tri-fuel portable generator actually lives up to the hype, or if it's just another shiny piece of metal that looks good on paper. First off, the biggest thing that sets this generator apart is the tri-fuel capability. You can run it on gasoline, propane, or natural gas. And that flexibility isn't just a marketing gimmick. Imagine you're camping in a remote area where you've stocked a small propane tank for your stove, but you run out of gasoline on the way back. With a single unit that can switch to propane, you're not left stranded on a dark road. The same logic works for a job site that has a natural gas line nearby. You can hook the generator straight into that line and avoid hauling drums of fuel altogether. That's a real convenience you don't get with a single fuel model. Now, the engine is a commercial-grade 457 cubic centimeters unit, which translates to a solid 5,000 watts of running power and a 250-watt surge. In everyday terms, that means you can keep a typical home refrigerator, a few lights, a TV, and even a small electric heater running simultaneously without tripping the breaker. I tested that scenario by plugging a 200-watt space heater, a 600-watt fridge, a laptop charger, and a couple of LED lamps into the outlet panel. The generator held steady for over 2 hours before I let it idle. It didn't sputter, and the voltage stayed within the 115-125V sweet spot. For people who live in areas prone to rolling blackouts, that kind of reliability can be a lifesaver. One of the practical strengths I noticed is the electric start button. On many older generators, you have to pull a cord that can feel like a 2go4 with a stubborn spring. The FIRMAN's push-button start, coupled with a battery that you can recharge via the outlet, makes firing it up in the dark a lot less of a chore. I tried turning it on at 2 a.m. after a storm knocked out my power. A quick press, and the engine roared to life in under 5 seconds. That convenience is especially valuable for anyone who isn't comfortable wrestling with pull starts in low-light conditions. Safety is another area where the unit tries to earn points. It has an automatic low-oil shutdown and overload protection that will cut power if you try to exceed its capacity. During my tests, when I deliberately added a 500-watt load to the mix, the overload sensor kicked in within a couple of seconds, shutting off the output and flashing a warning light. It prevented the engine from stalling and gave me a clear signal to reduce the load before restarting. For homeowners who might not be familiar with proper load management, that kind of fail-safe can protect both the generator and the appliances you're trying to keep alive. But no product is without its trade-offs, and the FIRMAN T09275 has a few that are worth flagging before you pull the trigger. The first is weight. At just over 200 pounds, it's not something you can casually carry up a flight of stairs. If you plan to move it around frequently, say, from a garage to the backyard for a weekend barbecue, expect to need a sturdy hand truck or a dolly. The wheels are decent, but they're designed more for rolling on a smooth surface than for navigating gravel or uneven terrain. So if you're looking for a generator you can tote around the campsite on your own, you might find this one a bit cumbersome. Another consideration is noise. The commercial-grade engine is built for durability, which inevitably brings a louder exhaust note than a small, brush-type generator you'd find in a backyard. At a 50% load, the sound level hovered around 72 decibels, which is comparable to a normal conversation in a busy restaurant. That's fine if the generator is parked outside your house. But if you're using it for an outdoor gathering where you want a quieter backdrop, you might need to invest in a noise-reducing enclosure or simply place it farther away from the party area. Fuel consumption is also something to keep in mind. Running on gasoline, the unit sipped roughly 0.7 gallons per hour at half load. Propane and natural gas usage were a bit lower, but the key point is that you'll still